All right, today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the maths modelling book that was designed and created to go alongside structured maths approach. So a few years ago when I created my lesson sequence for structured literacy, I created a modelling book that runs very similar in terms of having the lesson sequence down the side in a space for you to sort of do your working and learning in your structured literacy lessons alongside your students. I've got a giant version example here to show you what I mean. So down the side here is the lesson sequence for structured literacy. I have a space for my modelling book, my sessions with my students, and then in here are the steps and parts of the lesson that I am doing in a structured literacy lesson. So writing down the sounds that we're doing, our letter formation, the explicit teaching, a space for some words that I'm going to be able to use to fill in what I'm doing, and sort of that overall general sense of accountability and planning when it comes to structured literacy. So what I decided was to then create one for structured maths approach because I knew that this lesson sequence and this modelling book worked. It was a sequence, it was a creation that helps teachers keep accountable and a place for you to document what you're doing in your lessons, similar for maths as well. Now, of course, you could use just a general modelling book, any scrapbook, paper, a whiteboard, anything you've got, but if you're wanting to sort of streamline your practice a little bit more, have some more in-depth planning, that accountability, bringing in your AFL practices, this modelling book is really great because it also includes the lesson sequence within the lesson here from your structured maths approach lesson sequence. When I refer to lesson sequence, I'm meaning this page from the structured maths approach resources. You'll see there is your lesson sequence down here, and this is sort of what you are doing and running in your lessons while using structured maths approach. And the modelling book reflects that, so that you've got that accountability, you know, as you're going through, you've got space to plan, to write down and keep track of what you're doing, and building that overall sort of explicitness for you as a teacher, but also allowing for space in your lesson for your students. So to work through this down here, we've got the exact lesson sequence, which is taken from the book just over here from Structured Maths Approach. It is written and added in here for teachers to help build their accountability. So you've got your group name, you've got your learning outcome or your learning intentions, the lesson from the book that you're using, your number identification. So what numbers are you having students work on? What numbers are they reading? What numbers are they writing down? Adding those in here to help you keep track of what you are doing in your lesson. I know that typically I am always including or covering numbers that are always the same, so this is a really great way for each week being able to plan out, and even each lesson, exactly what numbers you're going to be giving for your students depending on their needs. You've got your hotspots, so what are they doing as a warm-up activity, any sort of revision, and then your new skill here. So explicitly teaching, the strategies used, even the numbers here that you're going to use as teaching or prompting examples. I know that sometimes when I'm working on my lesson here, I'm having to think about and generate numbers down here, which sometimes in the moment I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what one can I do? What's an example? And having them already pre-planned or included down here in your modelling book is a really great way for you to keep track. And I can see here, these are the ones that I've done. And even tomorrow when I circled back on the lesson, I can focus on the ones that I've already written down and generated but haven't included. I've then got a space for where to next. And then I also have my lesson here. So this is what I covered in my session with my students. I've got some warm-up hotspot up here. I've got some notes from my students, so some examples here that I've just attached. And then also I've got my lesson of learning here, which you can use with your students. I've got my example in a word problem. I've got my working out around here. And this is sort of from the lesson live with the students. I just want to talk about the size roughly. So this is an A4 printed size, which you might like to use, but this bigger one here is an A3 printed size. So you can see it's a little bit bigger. Again, this one here is my structured literacy one, but I could also print out this maths version as a bigger one in an A3 size. Now, I don't currently have an A3 printer, which is why I have mine in a smaller version, but again, you could have yours printed based on what your preferences are and your group work for your students too. Now, if using it in a modelling book form like this isn't your thing, there are some ways around that, especially if you wanted to continue using one of the large giant scrapbooks, but you still liked the sequence part of the modelling book here. What you could do is when you get this digital file from online, you can actually cut down here and cut this part off, have this part, glue it in your larger scale scrapbook, and you've still got that sequence here for you as the teacher, and then you have more recording space and use in your regular size scrapbook. I know that when I was using modelling books in my classroom, one of the giant art scrapbooks are always great because you've got more space, but again, you might also be wanting that tracking part, that sequence, that helping and keeping you accountable, the sort of planning and the sequencing of the lesson. So an idea is to cut it off. There is actually in the download 3 of these to a page, so you could cut those up, print and glue, and put those in your larger scale scrapbooks, and then you've got your modelling book part in your regular modelling book, so some ways around that too. Post-it notes are really great, having those for students to work on and attaching them by stapling them to the page. You could have one per class and have tabs at the top for different groups, or one per group, and then once you've got your next page, you just turn it over and you have your next lesson here. Again, we've got that referral to the lesson the day before, so I can have a look and think, cool, which numbers did we work on? Awesome, I'm going to have my lesson plan over here, and when I'm doing my planning online as well, I can also have my book too to help me remember what it was that I was working on. So what were those numbers that we used? What's our lesson? What's our focus? What numbers am I drawing down to use as examples? Writing that, typing that in on my planning, and then also I've got that when I'm planning for my next group, I can write that in document on there as well. So those are just a few ideas on the Structured Maths Approach modelling book. If you are interested in using that, you can head over to the website to download that as well and have that for you in your classroom. There's a different few variation of the covers as well. This one here says Maths Group Modelling Sessions. There are a few sort of different wordings depending on which one you're wanting to use, and again some ideas around how you can just use the slip alongside some of your other modelling books too, and how it aligns to the lesson sequence from Structured Maths Approach. So please let me know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy using your modelling book in your classroom.